Thank you for coming. So I'm Sho Sugiura, co-founder, CEO at BrockQ Inc. And BrockQ is a quantum software company, for quantum computing. So my background is physicist. I was scientist, quantum computing physicist, and I got some words and so on. So please trust me trust what I'm saying. And I wanna give a brief overview of like what's the or like history of quantum computing, like recent recent history of quantum computing, and also what's the current status. I want to just make a foundation of the discussion. So actually, like 2015 or something, we start talking about quantum computing, and that era was like nightmare. We call it NISQ era, noisy intermediate scale quantum computing era. We expected we have some useful application coming out by using NISQ, but it turns out that it's almost concluded that no any useful application coming out from NISQ because of the noise. So noise is so big and circuit is so shallow, and we have a lot of noise problems, so we cannot get reliable results. So it was kind of nightmare. But the situation has been changed after 2023. So first, Harvard startup called Coolera announced their first error correction. Essentially, they achieved a way to reduce the error. And that kind of computer is called fault-tolerant quantum computer. You might think, yeah, if it's big enough, it's cryptographically relevant quantum computer. So it's essentially similar to that concept. But IBM have this kind of roadmap. So 2020, but they have they are taking step-by-step approach. So they are taking like this year they are focusing on connectivity. But 2026, this year is very important. Logical qubit is something the key. So people are always confused between physical qubit and logical qubit. Logical qubit is a bundle. Physical qubit, we bundle physical qubit like 100 or 1,000 physical qubit and make it into one logical qubit. And using this like majority vote-like thing, we reduce the error inside the qubit. So that kind of logical qubit is a unit of the quantum process. So physical qubit is like a component of logical qubit. So in that sense, IBM is still, preparing the demo for logical qubit, so it's still developing. And 2027, they build up modular logical system and multi-logical system, and 2030, they plan to make a scalable FTQC. So that's kind of timeline. So they are taking some sort of step-by-step approach, but some other companies have more extended roadmaps. I will show one of them. So IonQ, that is based in Maryland, that's listed on NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange, but they have very aggressive roadmap. They publish very aggressive roadmap. They are currently only have physical qubit, but 2026, they have 12 logical qubit, and they scale up. And 2028 or 2029, look at the number, logical qubits is 1,000 or 8,000. So if that's true, this is cryptographically relevant quantum computer. So in that sense, they are kind of, honestly speaking, I don't believe what they are saying 100% because it's so hard to scale like this, like 10x, 10x, and 10x every year. So it's very hard. So I'm not sure, but if they successfully achieve that, essentially 2029 or 2028, they will reach to that inflection point. So that's what I want to say. And also the error rate. So logical qubit and logical error rate is kind of key, but this error rate is enough for decryption, and logical qubits are also enough. But then, last year, there were announcements about Willow and, Majorana qubit. So they are talking about it, but actually, at this point, what they made is just one logical qubit. And Microsoft made just one physical qubit. So we don't need to panic right now because we only have one logical qubit. But as we scale, we are approaching to the era of quantum computing. So last part is, so I want to show some graph, figure. This is edited from DARPA's result, but please different points correspond to different applications of quantum computers, like optimization, chemistry simulation, and decryption, magnetic simulation, and so on. But look at these diamonds, ECDSA and RSA, they are cryptography, like decryption by quantum computer. And the gap between RSA and ECDSA are kind of big, and ECDSA is, I would say, one of the earliest applications of quantum computing. But of course, we have some other early application. So if you see some magnetic simulation, technically it's called quantum spin simulation. If you see quantum simulation coming up, quantum spin simulation coming up from simulated by quantum computer, probably we should be ready for that, mentally ready for ECDSA decryption. And the number of logical qubits is around 1,000 to 2,000. That's the number of the current estimate. So yeah, returning to these numbers, you can see 2028, 2029. These numbers are not crazy. And also, I heard some other startup companies are publishing more their own update their roadmap this year or next year. So keep eye on these kind of their roadmap. So that's it. So final takeaway, quantum is, maybe I could partly convince that quantum is not like hype, but it's real. But don't fall for the hype around physical qubit. People always talk about physical qubit and try to make people panic. But we should distinguish physical qubit and logical qubit, and we should keep eye on the progress towards logical qubits. And also, many companies are expecting Moore's law, essentially exponential scaling of logical qubits and physical qubit, everything. So in that sense, it may be too late once exponential scaling begins. So in that sense, I think preparing now is a good idea. Yep. So that concludes my.
Hunter, would you like to add anything very shortly? And again, the sooner we get done, the sooner we can get people up.
So just a few more things I want to just kind of like highlight. I mean, you already touched on some of these things, but I think it's useful to like put into context. So like the idealized quantum computer is a fault-tolerant quantum computer, FTQC. And then, but technically a cryptographically relevant quantum computer doesn't need to be fault-tolerant necessarily entirely. Right. If you also have things like post-processing. IBM and AMD, for example, have made an agreement to work together to combine quantum computing with AI accelerators, and that could essentially be what's needed to take what's called a noisy intermediate scale quantum computer and turn it into something that is cryptographically relevant. Essentially, like GPU-based supercomputer working alongside a quantum computer, and that would reduce perhaps the number of physical qubits needed to implement Shor's. Shor's algorithm is what's needed to break ECDLP, or the elliptic curve discrete log problem. And another thing that often is not always acknowledged in discussions of qubit counts and quantum computing hardware is also the software. And so, like, there's advancements in Shor's where there's a number of different flavors of Shor's, implementations of it. Originally in early 2000s, cryptographers and quantum physicists were like, oh, we're going to need 6n qubits to break a 256-bit or whatever elliptic curve number, and but eventually, technically, the bare minimum, I think, is 2n needed for, like, you have registers for holding the public key that you want to target, and then you have like kind of a working memory. There's also A/B approaches for Shor's algorithm, and for A/B registers, you need 3n qubits. That's probably more the sweet spot for what you need for an NASQ, and so and 3n, so 2n, 3n, and 6n. A 3n would be 768 logical qubits needed to break a public key. So That's if that gives you more idea of like there's multiple facets to this. There's the circuit for the short circuit. There's gate depth, error correction, noise, and then of course the qubit count.
All right. So, with that being said, is there any sort of like punch, single sentence statement to kind of kick off and have people come up? One sentence, like to sort of incentivize people to come up and have that discussion point with you.
I think we need to take the problem very seriously, and we could be surprised by because it's such a there's so many factors involved in sort of like the in the problem.
Sentence. Show, can you give one sentence to sort of incite? So Hunter just gave one, this is happening, we have to take it serious. Show what one sentence.
One sentence. So, I'm not very deep into cryptocurrency space, but since the migration takes time, once exponential scaling begins, it might be too late. So we should.
Okay. So no, because they're going to come up. So now we'll have people. I don't want to pull the room. The idea is people come up. So we will have people available. If you want to come up, just queue up on the left, the right side, my left, and we'll start having people up. So please, if you don't want to be up and you want something to discuss, you can also just write on the whiteboard, and we'll have it. Yeah, feel free to grab a mic. Yeah, so please, so thank you for breaking the ice, but please, if anyone else wants to say anything, please come over here. Any questions, fine. Clarification, debate, agreement, whatever it might be.
Thanks, guys. So I'll start with a question. My question is, why would we expect logical qubit scaling to be faster than Moore's law in transistors was historically?
Yeah, 18 months is generally like Moore's law. And that's like a doubling in, say, qubit count or something, or transistor count generally. I don't know if it would be any faster, but again, it's a doubling, and exponentials are concerning. So, and the number needed isn't as high as we might think. So,
but even let's assume Moore's law. Right now, let's call it we're in the one logical qubit era. So 18 months gets us to 2, and 10 years gets us to about 40, and 20 years gets us to about 1,000. So we're in 20 years, if we started scaling today at the rate of Moore's law, in 20 years we might have a break in elliptic curve DL. So it just, the idea that the slides of the roadmaps you showed just seem very unrealistic.
Aggressive, maybe. But, well, I'd like to actually try to address, I don't know if it's a good answer, but your actual question is that, physical qubits have one, but if you're talking about logical qubits, of course, these are error corrected. So, that's another dimension you have to potentially increase over time is the efficacy of error correction methods. So if you're scaling now, you're not just scaling because if you're talking about Moore's law, it's literally only one thing. It's how many transistors can you fit. So there's only one dimension, right? But now potentially you could, I'm not saying you will, but you could potentially have two dimensions, one being the exponential growth of how many physical qubits you can, and the other can be an exponential growth in error correction methodologies that allow you to make more logical qubits out of those.
that was actually an innovation that we saw from the Willow white paper, was that there were I think they only needed 49 qubits for one
qubit?
yeah.
Minimum, yes, but it can be smaller.
Yeah.
And of course, there's no guarantee that it's going to grow at that rate, but it could.
So I think, of course, if it doubles every year and it's very slow, then it may take 20 years, but but it might be 10 years, 5 years. So in that sense,
So, the reason I ask it that way is because Moore's law, the doubling of transistors, was something that has never been seen before in the world. We've never seen something progress that fast before. And so I would say the idea that something new would progress that fast or faster is to me, pretty far-fetched. I would expect it to progress that fast or much slower would be the default assumption. And it seems like people in the quantum field are assuming better when Moore's law is the only thing we've seen scale that fast for that long in the history of humanity.
But why do you take the kind of most optimistic approach? Because we should take pessimistic approach, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is Moore's law is the most scary thing. And so the most scary thing is doubling every 18 months, and that's just not very scary.
So, I could get all Kurzweil on it and say the law of accelerating returns, and, if there's more progress in AI, especially toward age AI, but of course that kind of obviates everything. But yeah, but it is a valid point. But, maybe that's the first, because that's the thing, you're right. That was the first exponential trend that we've ever seen. Who's to say that we can't compound it? Right, especially with advances in other technologies. If we get farther on nanotech, if we get farther, quantum's in one of those realms, farther on AI, farther on nanotech, farther in, well, I don't know how genetic would apply. But, the point is we don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of my point one, is I don't see personally a reason to expect even Moore's law level scaling, let alone faster. That's why I'm not concerned about quantum. I still support your BIP, by the way, but I'm just not concerned about quantum directly. I still like the BIP.
So yeah, that's an important point, because even if it isn't going to be for 20 years, is that a reason not to address it? I mean,
well, no, exactly. I think getting the hashed tap script, tap tree into Bitcoin is a right thing to do, regardless of quantum. Just to be clear about where we're at here. My other thing is, my other thing there then is. So right now we're in the one logical qubit era. We've kind of been in the one logical qubit era for a very long time, and that gives me even more reason to believe that quantum is, if it's going to scale much slower than Moore's law, because despite all of the innovations that have happened in the last 5 years, we've still stayed in that same kind of one logical qubit, like that first phase. Now, maybe it will accelerate a bit from here, but the evidence isn't that it will accelerate from here. The evidence is that it's a very, very slow process to go from 1 to 2
and there
to
is
4.
other evidence to support that assertion. Just networking becomes a problem when you start to get into large numbers of these. But yeah.
As far as I understand, I think we've only been in the logical qubit era for maybe a year. I could be wrong, but like
Haven't I corrected?
Yeah.
A year now? Well, so like early days.
Yeah, but actually, historically, number of physical qubit increase exponentially. So in that sense, we have the reason to believe that it's scaled exponentially. And also, Google only have one logical qubit, but other Harvard startup already have 20 logical qubits. So in that sense, it's not just one.
Well, interesting. I don't remember. I am not a quantum physicist, but I thought I had read that the claims to double-digit numbers of logical qubits were essentially lies. Have you read that research? Is it real?
Well, I've definitely heard that. Like, I think, for example, like the Majorana Fermion, like the Majorana 1 Microsoft effort, they had to like retract one of the papers because there was some shenanigans of some kind. It's hard to know exactly. The state of the industry, just because everybody's so tight-lipped. I mean, for example, like PsiQuantum has a number of like defense contracts, I guess, and so they also hold their cards close to their chest as well. But then they also have like a whole page on their website for, I think they call it Blueprint, and they have like 99.99% gate error, and I think they have. I'd have to look at the page, but I think it was like. Maybe 1,000 or something qubits in their photonic systems, physical. But they're steaming along, and also I've heard a number of recent advancements on the neutral atom computers, where they have very high qubit counts, but they're much slower. And I think it was the defense contractors like Raytheon, or what do they call them, Continuum, and also that was actually Honeywell. They've been focusing more on the neutral atom computers because they're probably going to get to be more capable sooner, even though if the hardware is slower in terms of like clock speed. Hey, Claire.
Here we go. So I don't know how much of a debate/argument we're supposed to have, but I want to ask a question, hear your quick answers, and then maybe tell you why you're wrong. But we'll see what you say. So as there, especially in the development of Bitcoin, it's all very difficult. Lots of energy is going into that. Given your thoughts about the roadmap for quantum computing and so on, what should people do? People that have the understanding of Bitcoin, some understanding of cryptography, what should be their like next goals in the upcoming couple of years?
Well, one thing I would recommend is avoid hodling in taproot wallets. That includes like the Frost multi-sig type stuff because that's not really like in like a post-quantum paradigm, that's not going to be helpful.
So just to make sure I understand you correctly, you think that people should stop using taproot?
Not necessarily. I mean, it depends on like the amount of coin, like the value held.
Okay. So not putting high amounts of Bitcoin into taproot wallets. But so that's a point. I think you're also wrong about that. I would love to argue, but actually my question is, what should technical people focus on? Like, should they have other addresses? Should they, I don't know, disable taproot? Where should the efforts of the developers and the cryptographers go? Maybe cryptographers is a bit an easy question, but I don't know. How about you?
Well, I mean, yeah, so of course there's uncertainty, so it's not easy to predict, but why don't we have option for people who care about it? So in that sense, you know, like BIP 360, that kind of proposal is really help to, you know, give an option for like big institution or something. Yeah.
Could you be a bit more specific? Like preparing for addresses, or preparing to, I don't know, having like the lifeboat / CDR things. Like, where should we put our attention?
You know, I'm quantum computing guy, so in that sense, so which one is the best option?
Okay.
I don't have the the answer. But one thing I can say is, you know, quantum computer can crack ECDLP. That will affect whole internet or anything. But you know, the problem of cryptocurrency is unstoppable. So you know, once it happens, we can't stop it. And also, you know, the lifetime of the key is longer than other, like DeFi Hellman or some other network. So in that sense, you know, people has been using the same key for 10 years. That's kind of incredibly wrong. That makes the vulnerability higher. So in that sense, you know, I think blockchain is one of the most high risk asset against quantum computing. So in that sense, yeah.
You mentioned Lifeboat. One of the problems that Lifeboat solves is for short exposure attacks. And for people to understand is there's a distinction we made in the BIP 360.
So I think like if you don't mind, just a quick explanation. If you're using a hashed address, you're good, even if a quantum computer appears, unless you're spending from it. And then while your transaction's hanging out in the mempool, then you can be attacked, and then a lifeboat or CDR and all the structures are a way to protect you from that.
I was going to say, I somewhat protest the claim that using non-taproot addresses protects you in a quantum break situation, because as soon as you go to spend from a hashed address, you reveal the public key anyway. So you have to take some additional action, not just use a hashed address type.
But you are protected against long exposure attacks, though. And short exposure attacks would require a much more powerful quantum computer.
Yeah. So what do you think the focus should be from technical people?
Well, I think quantum computing will never, ever, ever, I think it's literally physically impossible for quantum computing to be what breaks the elliptic curve DL. I think it's much more likely that a classical break occurs. So I'm up here as the absolute quantum skeptic.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we should do BIP 360 because it's a good BIP, but not because of quantum in any way whatever.
And in light of that, also, like we've recently rewritten the BIP with the help of Isabel Fox and Duke, and originally it was called Pay2 quantum resistant hash. We took basically a lot of the quantum language out because it just wasn't as relevant, and because it protects against more than just quantum computers, but also just like being able to allow us to not depend on public key generation in the process of address generation. Then you can essentially decouple the dependency of ECC, and then you can have whatever signature algorithms you want to use, those like even like what we call post-quantum cryptography is also presumably, I mean, resistant against perhaps other forms of ECDLP breakages.
So I'll get off the stage after this. I want to say, yes, BIP 360, and then we should also do something like opcat or the script restoration inside BIP 360, because then we can build quantum-resistant signatures inside of those tap trees, and that actually provides some protection. So yes, let's make some soft forks.
Yeah.
Mic drop. Here's the
literal
drop.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
It was great, yeah.
Okay, cool. So here goes the person that says all the technical people should just have pina coladas and chillax. And it seems like you guys are saying we should do something.
I think we should be prepared.
Yeah, no, but like, how are you going to be prepared? What's urgent? I think like the fact that we don't have clarity about this makes us run around instead of saying, okay, the first thing we want to have is some solution to the hashed addresses. Maybe we want some solution for people that publicize their public key, because we told everybody that public keys should be public. It's in the word. There's like lots of not thinking about the next 3 steps and thinking only like 100 steps into the future, or just saying we should do something, which, yeah, sure, but what?
Well, I mean, BIP 360 is a very small change that would be needed to fix the quantum vulnerability in Taproot, and I mean, I think we've worked really hard at just really scoping down the problem to something very simple and explaining why it's needed. It does need to be probably would need to be coupled with either opcat or SLH-DSA BIP, but yeah.
Yeah, but the moment you couple it with opcat, you're like, oh, okay, now you have opcat and you can have weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like
right.
opcat is not
SLH,
for free. Opcat brings like a whole bag of trouble with it. So
it definitely enables more expressivity in script, and if that is a concern, then SLH-DSA should probably be the focus.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of just of the mindset that we should be as simple as possible, and like even without going to like a full post-quantum scheme. Like there are potentially things we could do, at least with anything using deterministically generated seeds, to mandate a second witness when spending a coin, say prove control of a related key in the derivation tree that you'd never actually reveal with a zero knowledge proof, and just create a very basic, like this will get the job done migration mechanism for anybody who's at least not reused an address or has a hash script type.
I don't know if that counts as the simplest solution, because it sounds like there's a lot of infrastructure work to be done there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
versus a bunch of things where they're just like, the reason I like some of the CDR and things like that, they are things that can just lie around. Nobody needs to touch them. Nobody needs to do anything until the moment we actually do need. And here you're saying, let's already do something, let's already push something. And that's always difficult.
Well, I mean, just implementing and like speccing something like that so that all people would have to do is move their coins to a hash script type that has never revealed the public key before. And then this reference implementation would exist. If something were to happen, all of those people are safe, and the only thing necessary to eventually migrate their coins to a full post-quantum scheme would be their wallet or signing device supporting constructing this extra witness.
Sorry, I think I'm missing something. So right now, everybody has the option to move to a hashed address. What?
I'm saying like during to cover the short range attack, like a soft fork in a requirement for this additional witness that like proves control over an unrevealed but related key.
So I think there's an argument of what's simpler and what not, because just moving to a hash address and then saying later on we can have an infrastructure sitting on the side, not change anything at all, and only if we need it we'll push the key and we'll push the button, and you want to push the button now.
Well,
and
no,
that's
we don't have to
really
push the button like that. That could just be like, you know, maintain the implementation of like adding the new consensus rule requiring this other witness, and then just have a reference implementation for like a signing device to construct it, and then like we can just push that button if we see something happening, and that's a bare minimum amount of safety that includes a migration mechanism.
So
Well, standalone keys are kind of shit.
For the recording, someone shouted out BIP 30. You said 38. So the question that was shouted out was BIP 38 wallets.
I mean, the paper wallet. I mean, those are just like public keys, and so. But I think like if we're talking about like a simpler solution, I mean one potential solution would be to like not even need to make any changes to Bitcoin, and we would just have a private mempool where we publish any kind of transactions that were during like any kind of break like this, and so.
Did you suggest a private mempool?
Yeah, well, I mean that's how the Andro bridge works, and that's quantum resistant, and so. Yeah,
but that's terrible. We all know that's terrible.
Well, I mean,
I know this meme, but it's worse. You know, this is worse.
It doesn't scale, but it's simpler, and in order to scale that one solution, you then have a side chain like Andro, and then.
But that's really bad. It's like the simplest solution is just to turn off Bitcoin. I don't know, private. I think like just. Private mempool.
You are correct in that.
Really bad.
The most simple solution is just to sell all your Bitcoin and
whatever.
Live under a rock.
Go to town, enjoy yourselves here.
Buy a bunch of gold or whatever.
But like from the acceptable solutions, what is the one thing that needs to be done now? Like if you had the ability to hire as many developers as money can buy, and then just they'll sit down and they'll do one thing. What will be the one thing that needs to be done now? Would be like the best first step.
I mean,
the migration mechanism.
Well, which one? That's the yeah, exactly. So migration mechanisms, like we need to choose a migration mechanism, and that's not a technical problem. That's a social problem mostly, and.
Technically, you wouldn't need a migration if you were to commit to BIP32 secrets, and like in HD wallet, like something between the BIP39 seed and BIP32, you could make a Stark proof that would require that would be how you would spend your coins in that scenario. And that's like technically how Ethereum intends to proceed.
All right, real quick. Closing statements. I want to keep you if you'll stay. Yeah, sure. I don't want to keep you anymore.
Bye, everybody.
But also, I want to hear. You answer, Clara.
Sure.
What do you think about when we're talking about migrations and when we're talking about what to do?
Yeah.
I know you said you weren't like necessarily really deep in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies or whatever, but what kind of thoughts do you have on that?
But I think having quantum resistant transaction method is the first thing to do, because hourglass or burning Bitcoin, that kind of proposal is. Justified after we have the quantum safe wallet. So in that sense, having quantum safe wallet is something what we all agree. So I'm kind of a bit worried. So I think it's either Safeguard or BIP 360. I don't know which one it is, but yeah, I think that's the first thing.
So are we still arguing? Are we doing something else?
Real quick, we have a new panelist. Did you want to ask a quick question?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, I was just wondering if that guy could come up and maybe talk about why he thinks quantum. He made a big point about, I don't think quantum's that big of a deal. And that registered with me being a layman in the back, like, all right, is this something I don't have to worry about that much? So I'm
Yes.
wondering if he could expand, and also like what you guys actually think about that. Like the layman is like, how much do I really have to worry about this? So yeah, I don't need to be up here. That was just the question. Thank you.
So, I mean, she can come back if she wants, but I like that. So, audience member just said like, "Hey, I feel like we missed the point." Came up, asked a question. That's totally fine for anyone to do. So, really, just clarifying. This guy with this crazy orange hat just said, "Hey, you guys, I think this is all just a waste of time. This is never going to happen. Not physically possible." And then we sort of didn't really, I think, address that enough, right? So, thank you for coming back, and yeah, go for it.
So, as I said, I think there's multiple reasons why I don't worry about quantum. One, the scaling, even if it is possible, the scaling I strongly doubt would be faster than Moore's law. And then the reason I think it's physically impossible is that we've seen already in kind of using quantum phenomenon in the real world that you can't use quantum to violate physics. You can't use quantum entanglement to communicate faster than the speed of light. You can use quantum entanglement to get certain effects that are kind of similar to traveling faster than the speed of light. You entangle things, you move them apart at slow speeds, and then you read out some value, and it's kind of like communicating faster than the speed of light, but it's not actually. And I think the same will turn out to be true in trying to solve real-world problems using quantum computers, that if the search space is exponential in size with the number of bits in a key, or the number of or the size of a number to be factored, or whatever the thing might be, the exponential search space cannot be reduced through the use of quantum computers. You can transform that problem into a different problem. For example, you can turn that from a search space problem with a raw classical computers going through every possible combination into a entanglement problem where you have to do an exponentially difficult thing to properly entangle 1,000 logical qubits, or an error correction problem where you have to search through the resulting noisy data in a search space that's just as large and just as difficult as the original problem was. You can transform it using quantum the same way you can transform the communication problem, but you can't elide the problem that the search space is a 256-bit search space that you can't search before the heat death of the universe.
Real quick, I just want to make sure. I feel like there's 2 points I want to hear each person address, okay? So one is he brought up this idea of exponential versus Moore's law is sort of like ideal, and we're not even going to get that as like one sort of point. And the second one is I saw you start nodding your head when he started talking about tech in terms of the space and the search space as well as you. So that could be a second point that I would like. If you can stay up if you want, but yeah.
So my background is not in quantum computing, so I'll leave it at the end. My background is in mathematics and computer science, and all I can say is that the math is mathing. So if these things can be built, there's no reason for them not to perform as well as they should be. The main question is, can they be built? And this is the main thing I'm skeptic about. The whole Moore's law, it's going to take a while. But I'll let them answer that. But I think the main point there is it's very difficult to give it a yes or no kind of answer because it's predicting the future and it's very difficult. What I think is that we cannot afford not to have a plan, not to have some kind of preparation. And just because you're calculating the expectation of having the scale of a disaster, then even if the probability is not very, very high, it's worth some effort to make sure we won't like hit a wall and be forgotten by history by not doing some preparations for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if we are able to build this hardware, then it should be possible to model the problem in Hilbert space and use quantum Fourier transform to parallelize the problem sufficiently to be able to find the number that we would expect. But I think the larger, the other thing I just want to make clear is that quantum computing is not sovereign computing. It's not something you can like just don't trust and verify. The NSA has been working on this problem for 20 plus years. They've been spending billions of dollars on it over that period of time. The US government is very concerned about this. They have set timelines. They have set roadmaps. The NCSA 2.0, there's a recent FinCEN guidance, and the government, like the US American government is saying we should be worried. And I think that might be
That's
something.
all the more reason that I am skeptical that we should be worried. I strongly suspect they're trying to push people in a dangerous direction.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's a different question. Like, can we afford not to be worried at all? Can we afford just to ignore it and just take the chance?
Is it called Brandolini's law that it costs more to refute all the bullshit than to make the bullshit?
Yeah.
So I think we can't afford to start changing Bitcoin to solve every potential thing that maybe someday could maybe break it. And that's, to me, quantum computing is in that category of this, yeah, look, is there a maybe outside possibility that someday maybe we can maybe solve, like break ECDL with quantum? Yeah, maybe. But I'm not going to invest resources in trying to solve that the same way I'm not going to invest resources in trying to solve Bitcoin for magnetronic alien tech from the planet Pluto.
So you're saying two different things here. Once there's changing Bitcoin, and the other one is resources. Because you can put resources into creating infrastructure that we can turn on when and if quantum computing becomes a thing. You don't need to change anything. You can be prepared.
Well, right, that's why I said, like, I support BIP360. I love that people are doing research into new quantum-resistant algorithms, but I would not support a fork to put a quantum-resistant algorithm into Bitcoin, right? So there's a nuance there.
Does anybody here support this? Anyone? Oh.
Like adding like SLHDSA?
Sphinx, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Right now? Not waiting for better algorithms, not waiting for it to be more efficient, not waiting for it not to be broken by some random person.
What's nice about like BIP360 is like you have the TAP tree, right? And so you can commit to an address that can commit to multiple different public keys of various kinds, and you choose the one that you think will protect you the most.
No, but like, right? Do you think we should add something, right? Like add Sphinx plus, I don't know, whatever the latest one is. Should we add this right now as an option?
Well, so like, first we're going to need an SLHDSA BIP that specifies, which op success code we want to overwrite, and also like which security parameters for Sphinx are we using, like SHA-2 or Shake or whatever, that kind of thing. Like all that stuff still needs to be specified.
But should we? Should we do all these things and get Sphinx in now?
Once it goes through the BIP process and there's a BIP for everybody to review.
Yeah. No, in due process, I'm not saying like hijack Bitcoin or something. Like go through the motions.
I think Sphinx is a very good start to at least be prepared, but it is not ideal because, of course, it results in signatures that are like 2 kiloVbytes, right?
Yeah, so that's why I think we should wait for something better.
Like SkiSign or Bitzip?
Or just like a better Sphinx. Do you want to say something about better Sphinx or something else? Okay, cool. Okay, so I think we should wait because...
The most we can tune Sphinx, like if we dial down some of the security parameters like roast beef,
Lalo had some things.
I think we can have that so down to like 1 kiloVbyte, but that's the most we can do.
But then maybe we'll wait 6 months and then we can do it like... the reverse Moore's law, it will be halved and halved. And then like we work so hard, and then by the time we're done with the code, there's a better scheme than what were we doing all this time.
I think SLHDSA would be the gold standard. It's just, it does have that, like in terms of security and security assumptions, it's not introducing lattice cryptography, for example, and Falcon's even worse because it also requires floating point math, which doesn't always like necessarily perform the same on all targets, and so I like Sphinx a lot. It's just that one, side effect. It's interesting to say like in the near term because like right now like we're in the middle of like subset summer. Like we have like literally less than 1 sat per vbyte in the mempool transactions going through on a regular basis, and so it's like scalability isn't as a bigger concern to me than having a for sure safe place to put coins.
I had a question sort of related to Moore's law. So my lifetime, I sort of think of my lifetime in terms of Moore's law, and like when I was a kid, there was like computers, and I thought they were really cool, and like no one else did. And then they got better, And then at this point now, everyone's a computer nerd, and that's all anyone does with their time is look at phones and stuff. But that was critical to Moore's Law happening. It wasn't just that things get better every 2 years or whatever. It's that the number of people stuck in front of computer screens was also doubling every 2 years. And the number of dollars going into what are now like $100 billion fabs and stuff in Taiwan was also cranking up. And to me, that is the big question. And so maybe, in the industry of quantum computing, on the one hand, one reason I think maybe I don't have to worry is I don't see that feedback loop, right? Where you're saying, okay, you've got these noisy intermediate quantum computers, and you can't really get that much value out of it in order to reinvest and start, okay, let's put 100 billion, let's put $1 trillion into this. But maybe you don't need that, or maybe it's because it seems like if you only get the payout at the end of many doublings of sort of Moore's Law progress, it's harder to fund that, right? It's harder to build that out because you don't have the revenue. But is there enough interest? Or
so the problem you're describing is essentially a bit of a chicken and the egg problem for the entire quantum industry. And in a way, Shor's algorithm on Bitcoin is table stakes. It could be the thing that breaks us out of that cycle, and it creates the first useful application that they can take to investors and be oh wow, this is actually a really good thing for a case for investment for quantum computers. And then once we solve that and quantum computers get more developed, then we can have really cool things like quantum chemistry and solving fusion power and all that.
Real quick,
Yeah.
I want to give Sho the floor real quick.
Sure, thank you. So, this year, around $2 billion is invested in quantum computing industry. So in that sense, it's piles up, and its amount of investment is increasing. But still, we think, or government or company think it's way lower than the potential quantum computer will generate. It will generate, it will make 100 billion or even bigger market. So in that sense, we haven't seen that kind of feedback loop, but the expectation is when we reach to the inflection point, the value is $100 billion worth. In that sense, we are I think the investment is made based on more an expectation increase of the expectation. Yeah.
And so, okay, given that, then maybe people working on Bitcoin can sort of help determine whether there is $100 billion worth of funding going to quantum computing research. Because if we all decide, oh yeah, no, we're going to burn all the coins, then it was no point in stealing them, no point in building computers. Probably not. Probably there's other reasons.
Yeah, but that's one application. But quantum chemistry or some other optimizations, there are so many.
So the way we stop quantum computers from ever existing is threatening just to burn Bitcoin if it happens. Is that the hot take? Is that the hot take from the TABConf 7?
But there are many universes.
Yeah, I've long believed this, by the way. I actually wrote on my Substack, Bitcoin is the great filter, a blog post, and I theorized that, maybe Satoshi left the original block reward in public keys because, and not in public key hashes, because he may have wanted to somehow accelerate our transition to quantum computing.
Second conspiracy of the conference is Satoshi purposely left his coins quantum vulnerable. Love it. I wanted to ask you a question. Now that guy's gone, who was saying that quantum is bullshit, now we can talk shit about him because he's out of the room. What do you think about that when people are pretty opinionated when they're like, hey, quantum I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Do you think that's sort of silly? I really just am curious about your opinion on that concisely.
One thing I can say is, there's no, as long as we see, there's no, fundamental limitation we see. So our quantum computer works perfectly, agree with that, and that agree with the prediction or simulation. So in that sense, quantum mechanics is perfect, and the Shor's algorithm is perfect. So in that sense, there's no flaw. So, and we know what type of error occurs in quantum computing, so we know how to improve them. So in that sense, I don't see any fundamental reason we don't have it. So we can't build a quantum computer. And also, quantum computer industry, government and companies are betting a lot of money, like 2 billion, 5 billion a year. So it's a lot. So in that sense, I think there's such a lot of people who believe in quantum computing and technically understand and make investments. Make investment of their own money. So in that sense, just ignoring without, understand detail is dangerous. So I'm happy to discuss about the detail. So yeah, if you have questions, let's talk.
You'll be available even after this panel to discuss, sounds like. Yeah.
I got to leave in 1 hour or something, but yeah, I'm happy to
You have them for 1 hour. So the panel's almost done. Obviously, no more panelists. We're about to close down. But I do like this group of people. I think, this is a nice group to have. If y'all want to have any sort of closing statements, real quick, less than 30 seconds, and
I got to talk about post-quantum signature aggregation tomorrow morning. So, and I think it says 9, but I can go a little later, so you don't have to come right at 9.
So one closing statement is don't panic. And if you want the longer version, I'm also giving a talk tomorrow at 11:30 right here, where we'll go over the state of Bitcoin, the state of UTXOs, where we are right now, and what are the plans for the future, some timelines and options. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a bit interactive.
The closing statement I would make is just that if you are considering selling all your Bitcoin for gold, Elon just demonstrated a fully reusable rocket that's going to take the price of putting payload into orbit down by 1 or 2 orders of magnitude, at which point asteroid mining will debase gold's monetary premium, and we're going to really only have Bitcoin as our store of value.
Sure, well, it's fun. Yeah, because I see many people who has totally different opinions. I don't usually talk with people like that, so it's so fun to talk. Yeah, exchange different opinions. So yeah, I want to learn more about the reaction and community. So thanks.